for joining on call today. This is a webinar for LaunchPad training. So I'll go over the general functionalities of LaunchPad. I am working in our AP Psychology Updated Edition, the 3rd edition of LaunchPad, but any of the navigation features that I'll show you today will be applied across the board for any of our LaunchPads that we have. So the first thing that you would want to do when you get into LaunchPad for the first time, you're essentially going to be taken to this dashboard that you're seeing right here. And so what you'll want to do is create a course for students to register into that course. I'll go ahead and click on that Create Course button up at the top. Click on Next after confirming which LaunchPad title you're using. And then from here, I'm going to rename my course title, something that's recognizable for students, right? So I might want to rename this AP Psych 2020 to 2021. And at this point, I'll put in my instructor name, my school name, the start of my academic term. And for the time zone, I'll set that as well. And for student LMS ID, you're not going to prompt that for students. It's just an additional step that really isn't necessary, at least for our high school folks here. So I'll go ahead and click on Create here. And this will create my LaunchPad course. Now at this point, my LaunchPad course is closed for student registration. And so if I wanted to get students to sign into the course or roster into the course, I'll go ahead and click on Activate here. I'll go ahead and click on Activate again. And this will give me registration instructions to send to students. Now, just to point out here, the course creation steps that I just showed you does not apply to schools who are using Clever or ClassLink integration, because those integration would auto-create your courses for you. It would also auto-create the students, and it would auto-create your, again, your account here, your LaunchPad account in here, so you wouldn't have to do the course creation process. So what you're seeing here is the course creation process for a LaunchPad only school that is not using integration. So you'll go ahead and copy and paste those instructions, send those out to students. The most important part of this is a unique web address that you'll send out to students. It's unique in the sense that it'll have the course ID number towards the end there, right? So you're ensuring that students are rostering directly into your course. So I'll go ahead and click on Done. And as you'll notice, my course has now opened for student registration. Now for student registration, how this is essentially going to work is students will receive that email that you'll send out. They'll navigate to that web address, which is already populated here. And when they navigate to that web address, they'll self-register with their first name, last name, email address. They'll create a password, and they'll roster themselves into your course. I'll go ahead and click into the course name here. I'll enter my course. And this will take me to the home page of LaunchPad. So within LaunchPad, I can expand my units, and this will take me into ebook content. So I'll go ahead and click on the Unit 1 Introduction. And then from here, it'll take me to an ebook page. In terms of our functionality here with the ebook, if I go ahead and start scrolling down, I might be able to find a section within the ebook that I want to launch into. So I might want to go to Psychology and its Histories, for instance. It'll take me to a different part of the ebook. And then if I find an important piece of information here that I would want to highlight, I can go ahead and use my cursor and highlight that section. I can color coordinate my highlight, red for confused, yellow for example, blue for important. So I'll go ahead and highlight this in blue. And for every highlight that I create, I can also create a note here. So I'll go ahead and start adding a note. Click on Save. And all of our notes and highlights get deposited into the notebook section here. So if I go ahead and click on Notebook, you'll see all of my existing notes. And from here, I can filter my notes based on highlighting color, by newest to oldest, as well as oldest to newest. To get back to my home page of LaunchPad, all I have to do is click on the Home button over to the left, and this will take me to the home page. Now, there is an alternative way to get into the ebook. So if I wanted to do that, I can hover over the help feature in the top right corner, and I would be given access to download the student edition as well as the teacher's edition. So if I go ahead and click on download offline ebook, this is going to open up into a completely new browser tab. And if you're a first-time user, it's going to prompt you to create credentials into the ebook, which is for free. This comes with the LaunchPad platform. I'll go ahead and click on save. And then from here, I'll be able to mark up additional highlights and notes. You'll notice that the note and highlight that I created in LaunchPad also appears here. So it's just an alternative way to get to the ebook. I can also get to the next ebook page by clicking on the next button. And then I'll be able to make additional highlights here. So again, I just use my cursor to highlight a specific section, and I can color coordinate my highlights. From here over to the left navigation panel, you'll have some tools. You'll have the table of contents where you can get to specific units within the book, a particular part, a particular module, and I can start from the beginning of the module to read and head into that ebook page. I can also search for specific terms within the book using the search bar here. So I'll go ahead and search for Freudian. Click on enter, and it'll give me results anytime that term shows up. And if I wanted to go to that page number, all I have to do is scroll down. Let's say I want to head into page number 11. It'll take me to that page. Okay. The next icon is the notebook section. So all of my notes and highlights that I've made so far get deposited here. So if I wanted to export these notes out, I can export it using this icon here, which is Microsoft OneNote. Alternatively, if I didn't have access to that platform, I can print out my notes and highlights with a physical copy. Now, I had only created notes for Unit 1, so had I created additional notes with multiple units, I'll be able to deselect or select any notes that I wish to print out. So it might be a situation where I might not want to print out all the notes for every unit, but I'll be able to make that selection before I go ahead and click on print. When I go ahead and click on print here, this will give me a list of notes that I've made, highlights that I've made. You can see how I color coordinated it, blue for important if you recall, and you'll be able to see the date in which I made that highlight or made that note. Right now I'm operating in Google Chrome as my browser, so I'll be able to change my destination file over to the right here. Right now I can save as a PDF in Google Drive. I can also switch this up and save this as a PDF onto my computer, or I can print this out as a physical copy. I'll go ahead and cancel out of this, exit out of print preview, cancel out of this window. And then from here, over to the left, I can access all of the images within the textbook consolidated in one area. So if I wanted to head into this figure, I'll be able to see a list of them here. And then alternatively, let me go ahead and click into one of them so you can see. Freud and Little Hans. And then if I go ahead and click on, and I can definitely zoom in on that picture once it pulls up there, and I can zoom out as well. All right, I can go ahead and click on the flashcards here over to the left. So users, either students or instructors, can create a new deck of cards. I'll call it deck 1, click on save. And for every deck I create, I can certainly add cards, and I can certainly add the term, the definition. I can certainly also add images. I'll go ahead and click on save. Right, down below, you'll also see this horizontal panel down below. This tends to go away as students are reading, just so it makes things easier in terms of the user interface so that students don't have to worry about that panel. So if I wanted to bring it back up, I just click on the white space behind the text. It will pull it back up. I can bookmark specific pages. I can scroll through the ebook pages here. I can also print out pages from the book. And I can also change the formatting options here. So I can enlarge the size of the text. I can change the default font from our default right there to Open Dyslexic if you have students with dyslexia, if I wanted to do that. And I can switch it to day mode, night mode, sepia, cyan. I could also adjust the margins, the line heights. I can make my adjustments here. Right next to the enhanced formatting tool, I'll be able to turn on the read aloud feature. An automated voice will read out to students. And I can go ahead and click into the settings option here to adjust my reading speed to make it slower or faster depending upon my preference there. I'm going to go back to enhanced formatting. I'll lower the size of the text here. Right next to that is just another way to make highlights. You'll also have the ability to cite specific sections within the book. So MLA, APA, Harvard, Vancouver format. To get out of my ebook, all I have to do is close out of the browser tab. This will take me back into LaunchPad. And then from here, I can access my resources in LaunchPad. So underneath the unit, if I wanted to find a resource, as you can see, there's a learning curve in here. So if I wanted to assign this learning curve activity, all I have to do is hover over the activity, click on Assign, and then I'll assign it for a deadline and point value here. So right from the calendar widget, I'll be able to select a deadline. I can also set a time. I'll leave it visible to students. I'll put my point value, and I can also categorize this. So I'll put this in a new category. Let's call it learning curve. I'll click on Add, and I'll go ahead and click on Assign. All right, and you see that the learning curve is now assigned up at the top. And you'll also notice that anything that you assign gets separated up at the top. The upcoming assignments will appear there. And it'll organize itself in the order in which things are due, making things easier for students to see what's upcoming. So let's go ahead and expand that unit and click into the learning curve to see what it is. So in the learning curve, I'll go ahead and preview as a student, begin the activity. A learning curve is a pass or fail assessment. So as long as students complete this before the deadline, they'll get full credit for the assignment, or they won't get credit at all if they don't finish this before the deadline. The value of this question is worth 15 points. I can go ahead and choose an answer choice here, click on Submit Answer. Now I got this wrong, so those 15 points have now decreased to 5 points. Students have multiple attempts at trying to get to the correct answer. And if they do get a correct answer, those points will be added to their target score. So the whole purpose of a learning curve is for students to accumulate as many points as possible to reach the target score, in this case 450, to complete the assessment and to get full credit. And if you recall, I assigned this for 5 points for students for full credit. You can think of a target score as just merely the goal students need to hit to complete the game. There are live links to the ebook page on this topic, which is no penalty. So if I go ahead and click on Read the ebook page on this topic, this will launch into the ebook right from here. And it will go to that specific section this question is referencing. I'll be able to scroll through. I can make highlights and notes along the way. I can also access my existing notebook if I wanted to. I'll go ahead and exit out of that, head back into the learning curve. And let's say I still don't know the answer to the question. I can go ahead and click on Get a Hint, which will lower the value of the question from 5 points to 3 points. I received a hint. And if I just really don't know what the answer to the question is, I can click on Show Answer, but no points will be added to the target score. I'll be able to see the answer to the question, and I can move on to the next question here. Learning Curve is an adaptive quizzing engine. So the better that the student does in answering these questions, the more difficult the question value becomes. So you'll notice my first question was 15 points. Is trying to gauge student performance at this point. My second question is a little bit more difficult with 20 points. So as students move along into the assignment, they'll get more difficult questions if they do very well, and then they'll be able to finish the assignment much more quickly if they answer the more challenging questions. So basically, it could take one student less questions to finish the assignment, but it could take another student more questions. I'll go ahead and end student preview. And I do want to show you the analytics that you'll receive once students do a learning curve assignment. So looking at my roster, I can see that Ralph Emerson, in this case, completed the assignment, took 28 questions to complete the assignment, as opposed to Adam Smith, who took 25 questions when completing this assignment. Over to the right, you'll see the topic performance details. So you'll see the percentage of accuracy broken down by subtopic here. And so looking at this, I can tell that there's a weakness here, right? 60% accuracy for this subsection of today's psychology and its approaches. So I may want to address this topic in the classroom. If I wanted to fine tune these details and look at the results for a particular student, I can click on one of my students' names in the roster. So if I click on Ralph Emerson in this case, I'll be able to see the performance details for Ralph. And it looks like he received a 64% accuracy here. So this student would be able to see his own performance details. So Ralph will be able to expand that subunit, click on these resources or ebook links to read up on that topic to improve his accuracy on that subtopic that you see here. If I want to exit out of Ralph's view, all I have to do is exit out, and it'll take me back to the full class details that you'll see here. Now, students can see their own performance details. They wouldn't be able to compare themselves or see other students' performance details. As an instructor, you'll have visibility to all your students in your roster. Now, if you're not teaching on a particular subtopic for a learning curve, you can go ahead and edit the topics and uncheck subtopics that you're not teaching, right? So the assessment will not pull questions from that topic, and the target score will adjust accordingly. You can also edit the target score as well. So if you're finding that students are taking too long on this assessment, which our gradebook will record how long students have spent on each assignment, so you'll be able to look for that information there. You'll be able to edit the target score. You can lower it, increase that to make it more rigorous, to make it a little bit more easier for students, or rather than easier, if they're having difficulty reaching that 450 target score, you'll be able to lower that to perhaps 400 or 350. If I want to go back to my home page here, all I have to do is click on the home button here over to the left-hand corner, and this will take me back to the home page of LaunchPad. Now, LaunchPad generally have resources embedded already in your course by default, but there might be resources that are additional in the program that are tucked away into the resources section here. So if I go ahead and click on resources, which is the star icon that you'll see here, I can filter my resources by content by type or content by chapter. And if I filter my resources by content by type, it will filter my resources by student and instructor resources down below. Now, these resources are very, very much aligned to the AP Psych course. So it's going to vary across the board for whichever LaunchPad title that you're using. But you're always going to have some sort of assessment type. Learning curve for one, which is a formative assessment. And then you'll have some sort of higher stakes assessment. And with the higher stakes assessment, you do have flexibility with editing capabilities, and you can access their test bank from there. So I do want to show you how that's done. So for instance, if I want to click into one of my assessments, let me scroll down and choose the summative quizzes. And I want to click into the summative quiz for Unit 3. So if I want to add this to my course, all I have to do is click on Add to Course, click on OK, and this will add my Unit 3 summative quiz to my LaunchPad course. But here's the thing, you'll notice because I was expanded in Unit 1, it placed that Unit 3 summative quiz there. Because I had made this mistake, I can certainly drag and drop this to the appropriate unit it's supposed to fall under. So all I would have to do is drag and drop that Unit 3 summative quiz over to the Unit 3 folder, and this will place my Unit 3 summative quiz into the correct unit. So I'll go ahead and scroll down to Unit 3 again, expand it towards the end of the unit, or at the beginning, you'll see the Unit 3 summative quiz there. Now that I added the assessment into my unit, just like before, I would assign it. So I hover over that, click on assign, and then set a deadline in the calendar widget, time in which it's due, my point value. Perhaps I want to put this in a new category. So I'll just call this a quizzes category, click on add, and then we'll click on assign here. Okay. So that Unit 3 summative quiz is now assigned on July 31st for 10 points. Now, let's say I want to make edits to this assignment. So what I do is I hover over that summative quiz, click on more options and edit, and this will take me to editing view. Now, by default, it's going to take you to review and modify because you want to review the pre-built questions already loaded up into this assessment, which you'll see that I have, if I scroll down, a number of questions in here, 23 questions in this case. You'll be able to edit the wording of the questions. You can move the questions around in a particular order, and you can also remove the questions. Removing a question in this quiz will not delete it permanently from LaunchPad. It'll just revert the questions back to our test bank. If I want to make further edits, I'll go to basic info here, and I can change the name of the assignment, add a description. I can click on search questions, which will enable me to filter my test bank. So I can filter this by Unit 3, which makes sense because I'm in the Unit 3 summative quiz. I can apply those filters. I can also apply filters by module as well if I needed to narrow down my results. From here, I can also add a filter for question type. Let's say I'm just looking for multiple choice questions. I can also filter by level of difficulty, Bloom's level taxonomy, by topic, and again by module name. So we have various filters for these. Once you apply those filters, you'll see your results, a list of questions here. In this case, I'm showing 25 out of 383 questions for Unit 3. And if I scroll down, there's going to be a show more button at the end. So if I wanted to preview a question, I just click on the image of the question. It'll show me the question preview. I can also see the metadata here, Bloom's level of understanding, level of difficulty moderate, and so forth. If I like this question, all I have to do is click on Add Question, and you'll notice under Review and Modify, it bumped it up from 23 to 24 questions in my assessment. At this point, all I have to do is I go back to Review and Modify, make my final adjustments here by looking through. Let's say I didn't want to add that last question, so I'll go ahead and remove that. After I make my modifications, one more thing, you can also create a new question from scratch. So you can certainly create your own custom question, multiple choice, essay, multiple select, fill in the blanks. So you have flexibility there. You can also print out a physical copy of this exam. But if you're planning to host this exam online, I would recommend you go into your settings area here to adjust your administrative settings here, at least for this exam. So I can change the number of attempts. I can take the highest average score. I can require a passcode so students can't begin the assessment unless they know what the password is, and I would set that as an instructor. I can add a time limit for this. Question delivery, do I essentially want all questions to appear on one web screen or one question at a time? I can allow or disallow save and continue. I can randomize the question order and the answer order within the question. And then down below, I can show solutions after every attempt for students. Due date has passed or never. But there might be variations to that, right? Sometimes I might want to just show students that they were right or wrong, but not actually show the entire solutions for the entire quiz here until after the due date. So you can make various adjustments here depending upon the situation. I'll go ahead and scroll down and I can leave it as visible to students, hide for students from now, and I can also schedule my visibility. So I can hide from students until a visibility date. So if I have this due on the 31st, I might want to make this visible at the beginning of the week on the 27th, and I can set my date and time here and click on save once I'm done. And then finally, there is that last button right there, which is the assigned due date. And this is what we saw before when you just set the deadline for the assignment, your point value, your category. In addition to that, you can also allow late submission until grace period, number of minutes, hours, days, weeks, infinite. You can also schedule an email reminder a number of days, hours, weeks in advance as well. Now, once I assign to the entire class, it will now give me the ability to add a student or a group of students to make particular adjustments. Like for instance, I could add one student to my roster from here for this assignment and extend the deadline for that one student or for a group of students there. Same thing with the settings area. I'll go ahead and head over to the settings button. Obviously I could make settings for the entire class here, but I can make an adjustment to an individual or group of students. So if I had a student where I needed to increase the time limit, or if I had a student that I would need to increase the number of attempts, I'll be able to do so from here. Okay, I'll go ahead and click on Done Editing. I'll go ahead and click on the Home button, and this will take me back to the home page of LaunchPad. And again, how I got to those resources, over to the left, there's a resource start icon. You could filter it by content by type or content by chapter. And you'll see a list of your student resources here and your instructor resources down below. So we have a range of different items here. It could be videos, it could be those higher stakes assessments, a learning curve. And then you'll have a set of instructor resources down below, which may include lecture slides and some instructional material that would be helpful for you when you're trying to build your curriculum for the year. Now I do want to go over course management tools, at least with LaunchPad. So over to the left, right now we're on the home page. There is an ebook only section. So we're just viewing the ebook. As you'll notice, it removed all the assignments. This is just an easy way for students to read the book without having to skip over or look at the assignments from the home page. We have a gradebook here in LaunchPad, which you'll be able to export those grades out into a CSV or a TXT file. I do have a populated gradebook that I want to show you, so I'll go ahead and pull that up. Okay, and I'll go ahead and refresh the screen. It's been a while since I've been in this. So basically, when students answer these questions, and when you head into the gradebook here, for free response questions, you would have to manually grade those as an instructor. So I had already graded this for my student here, but I'll be able to see the student responses here in this small window, and then I'll be able to see the suggested rubric or responses in blue. Sometimes answers will essentially vary depending upon the question. In the gradebook, you can also add feedback for students, and you can also insert a templated feedback. You can also add a note just for yourself, which is not visible to students. For multiple choice assessments, those are automatically graded. So if you click on a student's grade, you'll be able to see what they got right, what they got wrong. So for the first question, they got it wrong. The student chose the social, cultural, behavioral as an answer choice, when the correct answer choice here was nature and nurture. And just like before, you can certainly add feedback here and insert a templated feedback as well. From the gradebook, next to the grade, you can also see time spent in minutes. Right, and then if I wanted to export those scores, I'll just go ahead and click on Export Scores. Scroll down and I'll give you those two options I mentioned before with CSV and TXT files. I'll go ahead and click on the Home button to get back to my home page of LaunchPad, so that was the gradebook. Now over to the left, I have the ability to get to my calendar, which is another way for students to view their resources, their assignments that are upcoming, so I can just click into the assignment and open it up. As an instructor, you have editing capabilities that students wouldn't have. And as an instructor, you can certainly drag and drop these assignments to a new deadline. I can go back to the Home button here, scroll down. Resources, that will just take you to the resources, content by type that I reviewed earlier. Underneath those resources, you have the instructor console, which will give you a number of tools here. Batch item settings are really nice to use. Basically, if you know that you want to assign learning curves to students, right, it will give you a list of learning curves here, which you can select all or select only the ones that you're planning on assigning. Now, this does not batch assign. This will just allow you to update your grade settings, meaning you can set the point value, the gradebook category in bulk for multiple learning curve activities that you see here. I can certainly change the publisher provided type, the assignment type. So if I wanted to click on, let's see, the summative quizzes, for instance, it's not going to list anything in here, as you'll notice, because I have not assigned the summative quizzes in this particular course yet. So if I go back to the home page, you'll notice if I go ahead and expand this, there are certain items here that I did assign, such as the module to multiple choice. So if I go back to the instructor console, click on batch item settings, and head over to the end of module review questions, it will list those items here, right? And I haven't assigned most of my modules, which is why it's deselected at this point. But basically, once you assign all of your materials that you want to assign for the year, for the semester, it will allow you to select all those assigned materials and make sure you globally set the grade settings in bulk across the board. So again, you can set the point value, the gradebook category, you can adjust the number of attempts, the time limit, the question delivery. You can randomize question order and answer order. These administrative settings that we just looked at, you'll be able to apply these settings across multiple items here. I'll go ahead and click on the home button here. We'll take a look at the instructor console again. In addition to the batch item settings, you also have the gradebook preferences. So if you want to make adjustments, let's say I wanted to use weighted categories, I can add my weights accordingly based on the categories I've created. I can also drop lowest scores. I would recommend you check mark 0 scores for unsubmitted assignments after the due date if you want to record zeros for students who haven't submitted before the deadline. Go ahead and click on the home button there. Right below the instructor console, you have the welcome page. This is that page right before students enter into the course. So I can certainly edit this page if I wanted to. So if I go ahead and click on edit, I can add a new widget, whether or not it's a custom RSS feed. If you want to bring in outside articles into the classroom, it's a good way to go ahead and do that. And I can also make further adjustments here depending upon what widgets I want to display for students. I'll go ahead and click on done editing and enter into the course. And then finally, over to the left, you'll go ahead and click on preview as a student, only if you're really curious to see what student view looks like in this case. So you'll be able to launch into student preview mode at any point. Okay, so this is generally how LaunchPad works. I'm going to take this few minutes to take a look at the chat to see if we have any questions that came in. Okay, I don't see any questions just yet. Does anyone have any questions here? And if you do, feel free to type it into the chat window here. Okay, great. I don't see any questions, so I'll go ahead and, oh, I think there is one more question here. Will this be available later? Yes, yes. This is a recorded session, and so we'll be able to post this to review later, for sure. Any other questions? Okay, great. I'll go ahead and stop the recording at this point. Thank you again for joining this session, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day today.